Pete Thamel of ESPN has joined the chorus of people saying that the seeding, don't expect it to change for next season to the format of the college football playoff. Ahead of upcoming meetings about the CFP, Thamel was on the College Game Day podcast on ESPN involving Reese Davis, and he was asked if they're going to change the seeding. So for those of you who don't remember, the top 4 seeds went to the top 4 conference champions, period, end of story, nothing else. And it created a problem because certain teams got an easier path by not even getting a top 4 seed. And all 4 teams that got a first round bye lost. Yeah, that's what happened. So there were major issues all around with the way this thing played out. So some people clearly thought, myself included, I said this from the start, that the bye was not going to be worth fighting for because, one, you have to win an extra game if you're the SEC or the Big Ten to get that bye. I mean, I get the incentive for lower conferences, but that's it. So, but here's what Pete Thamel said. He said that he said unanimous approval could cost the others outside the Big Ten and the SEC some money, and I don't think they're going to risk that. So remember, guys, you need all the conferences to get involved on that. Well, Thamel says, for example, the Mountain West got a team in the top 4 in Boise State. Boise State got a bye. That's $4 million extra for the Mountain West. I'm not quoting Thamel here. I'm just saying what he said. So you get paid. It's same with the NCAA tournament. A conference gets a payout for every advancement into the college football playoff. So it's the same with the NCAA tournament. Like the NCAA tournament, I think it's like $2 million. So like for every team you have in the first round of the NCAA tournament, you get $2 million. For every team you get in the second round of the NCAA tournament, you get another $2 million, and it keeps going. So you have an incentive for teams to advance. The same is true with the college football playoff. Every team in the first round, $4 million. Every team in the second round, another $4 million. By getting a first round bye, like Boise State did, they didn't just get $4 million. They got $8 million because technically for first round bye teams, you still get the $4 million for them making the first round of the college football playoff. So they're leaving money on the table if they agree to just the top 4 seeds get the top 4 byes, because we know the top 4 seeds are almost always going to be SEC and Big Ten teams with maybe one exception here and there. So with that in mind, they're not going to change the seeding next year. Thamel's quote is, the reason that the SEC and the Big Ten likely won't be able to get everybody to come along with them is money. So that is, unless they can find a needle thread there, I don't think there will be much change for 2025. Now, of course, the 2026 season could lead to many changes. The SEC and Big Ten could leverage their position. They could play a little bit of hardball. But this pretty much sets in stone that the seeding that we saw last year, the format that we saw last year for the college football playoff, is pretty much locked in. Now, you can hate it. You can dislike it, and I'm not saying you're wrong, but that's just where it is at this point. And I'm going to say bank on it. This is going to fuel more hardball negotiations by the SEC and the Big Ten, but also bank on it. It's going to alter how teams strategize their seasons next year.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions.
All right, our poll question, and I'm setting it up right now. Will the CFP seeding format incentivize teams to lose regular season games? Yes or no? And I'm just going to say it to you guys. Yes, it will, and it proved it last year. Penn State is very lucky that they lost the Big Ten title game to Oregon. What happened because Penn State lost the Big Ten title game to Oregon? Penn State got to play, I believe, SMU in the first round, and then they got to play Boise State in the second round. Meanwhile, Oregon, who won that title game, got a first round bye and then had to play Ohio State, who was on a mission to blow out everybody. The path helped Penn State. Guys, I told you this from the start. This was why Notre Dame outsmarted everybody. Notre Dame refused to join a conference even after they were told that this deal was made. And they said, we don't care. We'd rather take all the money for ourselves to make the playoff. And oh, by the way, yeah, we don't have to join. We can't get a first round bye, but we don't have to play a conference title game either. And this is the flaw you guys can't see. And I'm trying to insist this to you guys. If you're the SEC or the Big Ten, to get the first round bye is not really getting a first round bye. And the reason I say that is to get the first round bye, you actually have to try to win your conference championship game. So mathematically, you're playing an extra game anyway. Your extra game is either you end up in the same spot to get to the second round. To get to the second round, you either have to win the first round or win your conference championship game. You don't have to do both. So you can honestly just skip the conference championship game and say, you know what? I'd rather win a first round game probably at home than have to win this conference championship game on a neutral site and risk injury. This is the flaw with it. This is why the conference title games are going by the wayside. They are throwing it all away with the seeding. They weren't thinking what they were doing. And I'm just telling you guys, it's disastrous how it's playing out. I don't know if they didn't think this through. I think they did what they could to get the other smaller conferences on board. And but it's incentivizing teams losing games, which is so bad for the sport. This isn't college basketball where the seeding incentivizes load management, which I still maintain basketball programs should do that in college. It's not incentivizing load management in college football. It's incentivizing literally throwing the games. I mean, literally throwing the games, particularly if you're the second or the third team and you don't want to go to the conference title game. You'd rather just lose a game. Look, losing to Michigan helped Ohio State. They still got a home playoff game, and they didn't have to play in the Big Ten title game. Literally helped them, gave them a week off. This is the flaw in the whole scenario, okay? This is something that has to be addressed, guys. There's no way you can get around it. It's a real problem. And if it's not going to change, now that we have this format under our belt, what we saw in 2024, you're going to see teams do it a lot more in 2025. And then we don't know what's going to happen in 2026, because the other part is with 2026, if the SEC and the Big Ten are asking for automatic bids, that's still not going to change anything. This SEC championship, Big Ten championship thing is going to be a failure. The conference title value is dying for those schools. It's increasing for the ACC, the Mountain West, the Big 12, but how long are those conferences going to be involved in this whole scenario? I mean, could the SEC and Big Ten break off in 2026 if they don't get their way? It's certainly possible. So the seeding format is a massive failure. It's a bad look for the sport. It's going to be a bad look for the sport next year. And the college football playoff itself was a massive failure this year. I mean, you can't convince me otherwise. The ratings prove that. The ticket sales prove that. It didn't work. I told you guys it wasn't going to work. And I'm not trying to brag about how right I was, because, I never do that. I'm kidding, obviously. But look, it didn't work for a lot of reasons. One, the spreading out of the games over 2 weeks per round was just a disaster. Trying to work around the NFL schedule, which we knew was never going to work, and putting games right before Christmas and then games right on New Year's, because you want to protect New Year's as college football. I get that. But you're encouraging people to travel around Christmas and New Year's. People don't want to do those things. So all of that carries over into what happened with the college football playoff not working the way they wanted it to, and teams were rewarded for lower seeds. This was a big issue the whole time. And Steve Sullivan says it. This will be the last year of the conference championship game. Steve, here's the problem. I would like to agree with you, but these contracts that the SEC signed and the Big Ten signed with their networks require that they carry these conference championship games. And even more importantly, they require that those games generate a certain amount of ratings. What's actually going to happen is something Josh Pate talked about recently on his show, and what we've been reporting from Ross Dellinger and Yahoo. Once the SEC and Big Ten get their automatic bids, that's what they're going to jockey for in 2026. They want a minimum of 4 teams. There won't be a conference championship game that weekend. That game, the SEC title game, will be a play-in game between the 4th and the 5th team in the conference. It'll be a game where those 2 teams have to play to get in to the conference, to get into the college football playoff. That's how they're going to do this. That's how they're going to do this. That's the way to keep the ratings and the value, is those two teams are going to have to fight to get to the playoff. So I kind of agree that it's the last year of the conference championship game, but it's not the last year of the game itself. It's the last year that it is the game to determine the conference champion, because in a couple of years, just the top team in the conference will get the first round bye. That's how this is going to work. And I mean, look, I'm not a big fan of it. You don't have to be a big fan of it, but that's just the way it is. But also, this is kind of a natural outgrowth of mega conferences. We told you guys, I mean, that this is what to expect with mega conferences. You have massive scheduling imbalance. You have a 16-team conference with an 8-team schedule, and somebody's going to be the SEC champion because they played the easiest road, i.e. Texas would have been SEC champions last year without the conference championship game. I don't think Texas was a top 3 team in the SEC. I don't even think they belong in the college football playoff, quite honestly. They just played a really, really weak schedule by SEC standards, and that's something we have to talk about here. It's the same thing that Indiana did. The scheduling imbalance makes it so you can't really brag about the conference you're in to get a better seeding, because the truth of the matter is it matters who you play in the conference. That's the real big issue. So, look, there's a lot of problems here. Steve Sullivan says, I see a game like that going into 4 or 5 OTs. Yeah, the playing game between the 4 and the 5, I agree. I do. The problem with the auto bids, though, like that, the protected 4 spots, do they do it based on the standings in the conference or just the 4 highest ranked teams? Because, again, there's standings in the conference, but then there's non-conference games. Are we going to get rid of non-conference games? And by the way, not get rid of them, but devalue them? Are they all going to play just easy cupcakes? Which is a cheating of the fans, honestly. But then there comes the issue of schedule strength and the criteria they use for that. And the CFP last year did not use schedule strength at all in its formatting or in its selection. Otherwise, Indiana wouldn't have gotten in and SMU wouldn't have gotten in. And this is a problem. They're ignoring so many factors that I think are a problem. And they're not being consistent with it. I think they got to value schedule strength in this conference imbalance, not the conference you came from. Don't just default and say someone played in a tough conference. I think you've got to actually look at their overall strength of schedule. And you really got to hold it against teams for playing easier opponents. Now, I'm not going to hold it against Texas. The SEC gave them that schedule. They tried to schedule hard. They went to Michigan earlier in the year. It's not their fault. Michigan turned out to be awful. But these type of problems are going to keep occurring if this scheduling imbalance continues, and that's the real issue here. So as far as the poll question goes, will CFP seeding format incentivize teams to lose regular season games? And I guess when I say regular season, I am including the conference title in that, but 56% say yes, 44% say no. So people agree with me.